So, it's been a while since I've done a Chris Chan video. Well, now I'm back. And this one is about Chris and death. And dying is not happening with me. I'm set to stay alive for thousands of years. Chris, being absolutely delusional on Discord. Death is a concept that Chris has a notably hard time understanding and or coping with, be it the death of a human or an animal, or even an imaginary friend. While Chris certainly has the capacity to grieve and has undergone several periods of grieving in his life, in response to deaths in his family, his other reactions towards deaths are considerably more perplexing. His poor reactions to death most likely come from his near inability to empathize, a common symptom of autism, and childish thought patterns. Children often don't understand death, usually just thinking it's like sleeping forever or just leaving, or, in Chris's mind, merged with their counterpart from C197. Chris, being a child inside, can only resort to these clumsy analogies to understand death. Family. Aunt Karina, 1934 to 2009. When Chris informed Julie that his Aunt Karina was dying, Julie insisted that Chris visit her in the hospital, which Chris had not considered doing. He asked Barb about visiting her, and she dissuaded him. He did get the chance to tell Karina that he loved her over the phone before she died. Karina's funeral happened to fall on Chris's birthday, which also happened to be Shrove Tuesday, also known as Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras, a Christian holiday that in some churches involve pancake dinners. Naturally, Chris was more concerned about missing out on the pancakes at his church at home than he was about the funeral of his own aunt. When the "I know how to be sad because my dog died" excuse fails, Chris usually follows up with an offhand mention of his Aunt Karina. That fails, the deaths of his many sweethearts tend to follow. Bob Chandler, 1927 to 2011. After a long battle with heart failure, Bob's life came to an end when he was being hospitalized in the Martha Jefferson Hospital's ICU. In an unreleased call with Jackie, Chris broke down sobbing over his father's death. The call, referred to by fans as the Black Tape, was sealed out of empathy for Chris. In an email, Chris told Jackie that "my heavier cries for my father's passing is really hitting me bad," and lamented that in a previous dream, that Grim Reaper had promised that he would not claim Bob until 2015. In a 31st of March 2012 Facebook message, Chris expressed a desire for Bob's ghost to haunt the dreams of anyone who doesn't like him, putting him on the exact same level as his dead dog. While this was an understandable reaction to discovering plans that the trolls are going to dig her up, or discovering a webcomic that contained what he considered a mockery of her memory, his threat to send Bob's ghost after people is equal parts disrespectful and unreasonable. In a Facebook post from June of 2013, Chris laments that he had more freedom when his father was still alive, and goes on to complain about how he was to take time out of his day to serve and protect his mother. Knowing Chris, this presumably means that he sat around in his room playing video games while his elderly father did most of the work around the house. In C-Log 0904-2017, Mr. C, Chris, while reading letters from his late father, displays emotion over them, tearing up at times. During the Idea Guy saga, and the rather disturbing events that took place within it, Joshua convinced Chris that Bob had reincarnated as a Sonichu, with plaid colored fur in reference to his nickname, the Internet Lumberjack. Chris later retconned this design to much simpler, plain red design, because plaid fur was too much effort, and turned up in Quickville alongside Ted Bundy to defend the city. Using an autistic man's child dead father to troll them is disgusting enough as it is. Convincing them that said father is still alive in another dimension to help with their extortion efforts is on another level of messed up. Chris still believes they're bullcrap and will probably never accept that his father is gone forever. While in many cases believing a loved one is in a better place after death is actually a very common and usually quite healthy way of coping with their passing, literally believing that they're alive in your own fantasy dimension is actually extremely uncommon and extremely unhealthy. Barbara Chandler, 1941 to who knows. I really have none. Chris, on whether he has plans in place for after Barbara passing away. Barbara is Chris's surviving parent. When she inevitably passes on, Chris will ultimately be left with no coddling matriarch to provide support for or keep him company. And in the grander scheme of things, without parents, where everyone's favorite man-child will go from there remains a mystery, especially since it was revealed in an October 2013 post that Chris considers Barbara to be one of the few people who gives meaning and purpose to his life. Alongside Bob, who Chris entered a protracted period of grieving for after his passing, Barbara is one of the few people in Chris's life that he cares about enough to genuinely fear her passing. And Barbara has used this to manipulate Chris into following orders on multiple occasions. One such instance of this was in 2011, prior to Bob's death, in which he threatened to commit suicide as a last resort to stop Chris from his poorly thought out plan to attend MagFest in Maryland that year by sleeping in his car, as he did not have the money to afford a hotel room. A distraught Chris backpedaled, receiving only more guilt tripping in payment, only for some video games as a consolation prize. Barbara used her death as a scare tactic, for as long as it instilled paranoia into Chris. On one occasion, when Barbara failed to answer the phone when Chris called her while out, Chris panicked and called 911 for a welfare check. In November 2015, Chris released Family Needs to Appreciate Family, where he addressed Cole Smithy, David Allen Chandler, and Carol Suzanne Chandler to visit Barb before her time runs out. In November 2019, Chris posted a tweet where he copes on the mortality of his mother, imagining her becoming a part human, part Rose Chew hybrid after her death. In the same vein, he believed that Bob reincarnated into Robert Chew after death. Barbara was involved in a traffic collision on 24th November 2021. She suffered 2 broken ribs and a concussion, worsening her already declining health. A subsequent letter to Kenneth Engelhart on January 11, 2022 claims that Barb fell lethargic, implying but not confirmed that she might be bedridden as a case of the crash. Chris himself, 1982 onward. Given Chris's notoriously bad diet, lack of activity, hygiene, or social interaction, on top of a lack of motivation or concern for anything other than himself, it is generally considered unlikely that Chris will live very far into his 40s should he persist in his current lifestyle. However, there is a likelihood that, like Bob, who lived into his mid-80s despite suffering from and eventually passing away as a result of heart failure and alcoholism, he may be genetically disposed to lead a long, albeit miserable life. And believe me, in dreams and even in moments within my mind will awake, I have seen and felt the death of light. Not only is it the most horrifying thing ever, but I'm long not ready for it yet. Chris on his visions of death. In a conversation with the Wikipedia Sysop, Chris once mentioned that he had been receiving recurring visions of himself walking to a bright light, which he one day hoped would be prevented from appearing by getting a sweetheart. After the surreal conclusion of the love quest in 2018, it is unknown if he still gets these visions. In a Facebook post on October 30th, 2013, Chris stated that he had become so stressed out, specifically over the revelation that his high school gal pals did not actually like him much at all, that he had contemplated killing himself multiple times. According to Chris, the only reason he did not go through with it are painfully obvious. This shows just how much Chris's mentality is drained and how badly he needs the professional help he so stubbornly refuses to get. Of course, this could well be Chris exaggerating and trying to gain pity, as he's done in the past, and as his mother allegedly also has, or at least used to have, a bad habit of doing. In all seriousness, however, suicide is no laughing matter, and this should be looked at with caution. In a 2019 Discord chat between his fantasy enablers, Chris has been claimed that he has set to live for thousands of years. In August 2020, Chris, pretending that his body was possessed by Shauna Chu, uploaded a video will, apparently in his body, vanished from this dimension. 1218. Pets. Patty, 1988 to 2006. Patty was the Chandler family's pet dog, who died in June 2006. Chris apparently drew a picture of a crying Sonichu face on the signature, confirming the euthanasia process. As seen in the image used in this article, Patty also appeared in the comic, immortalized as a furry character named Patty Chan. This is particularly disturbing in that Chris has apparently decided to deny his dog the afterlife that he presumably believes in favor of locking her in his own personal hell. To Chris, her death is the greatest tragedy of his life. Many often compares to the deaths of other people's family members and loved ones. Unsurprisingly, every single person he has said this to has become horribly offended. In Chris's plea to Clyde Cash, he equates Ryan Cash's death with Patty's. In the father call, he equates the death of Matthew Devoria's mother in the 9/11 attacks. On the 1-year anniversary of her death, Chris even broke down in tears and had to be consoled by his mother. By comparison, the death of any sweetheart will result in a few days of mourning at best. It should be noted, though, that despite all of Chris's fondness for Patty, in memory was still not safe from being defiled by trolls manipulating him. Polo. Polo was a cat that was born sometime in 2003, that was adopted by Chris in 2015, who had passed away in May 2018. On May 20th, 2018, Chris posted an urgent tweet to Twitter stating Polo was having difficulty breathing, that he needed money from eBay in order to take Polo to the vet. Following a wave of backlash due to how Chris was seemingly using Polo's condition as a way to get sympathy donations, Chris would delete this tweet. Despite his plea for donations, Chris announced on Twitter that Polo had passed away in the early hours of May 20th, 2018, presumably due to the aforementioned breathing difficulties or for other natural causes. According to Chris, Polo was buried next to Patty's resting place. Sorbet, 2016 to 2018. Sorbet was a cat Chris adopted in 2016, who passed away in May 2018. In May 2017, Sorbet wandered out of the house and was hit by a car. Fortunately, Sorbet would survive the incident after Chris took him to the vet. However, in a video about the solar eclipse from August 2017, Sorbet was shown to seemingly have difficulties breathing. On May 17, 2018, Chris posted to Facebook in order to announce that Sorbet had gone missing after he was let outside. Chris would put posters with information relating to Sorbet on several telephone poles near the area in hopes of finding him. However, Sorbet would not return. As in a text message from October 2018, Chris confirmed to a fan that Sorbet never came back and pronounced him dead. In order to cope with the loss of Sorbet, Chris claimed that Sorbet's soul had supposedly been reincarnated to dimension C197 as an anthropomorphic cat, and that he had since been able to meet with him. Other cats. Multiple other now-deceased cats once resided within 14 Branchland Court, the most notable of which has been Scamper, 2006 to 2014, cat that unfortunately passed away as a result of the 2014 house fire and Patches, October 2018 to November 2018. A kitten sadly passed away due to the complications relating to pneumonia, only 1 week after Chris had adopted it. Snoopy was a dog who was adopted by Chris and Barbara alongside Clover in May 2012, who had passed away in July 2021. Snoopy had apparently suffered a leg injury before he was adopted, causing him to have trouble walking for the remainder of his life. Following a long period of seemingly improper feeding habits, Snoopy died in his sleep during the early hours of July 14, 2021. After Snoopy's passing, Chris posted a eulogy dedicated to him on Twitter. In it, he explained that his neighbor and their daughter helped bury Snoopy by a tree, making a stone mound around the burial to indicate where the body was. Chris was understandably distraught and saddened over the death of Snoopy. However, he still remained confident in his coping mechanism, the dimensional merge. On Twitter, Chris said that Snoopy was aware of the merge, which meant that him and Snoopy would reunite after the merge was complete. Chris would also, bizarrely, claim that he has seen an anthropomorphic version of Snoopy from other dimension during his burial, stated that he looked like a tall dog guy. Imaginary friends. Chris is also concerned over the deaths of his imaginary friends, such as Sonichu and his pals. Since Chris believes all cartoon characters exist in some universe, he had created Sonichus. He feels that if he were to reboot the comics, that would mean that Sonichu and his friends would all die, and that they would all reincarnate into their newer rebooted versions. Being his love and joy, the last thing on Chris's mind would be to kill his creations, but yet is perfectly fine with freezing them in time with his hiatus on the series. The Idea Guys allegedly extorted Chris out of thousands of dollars by telling him they would destroy Quickville, which would lead to the deaths of many of Chris's imaginary friends. Chris paid up, even putting his own house at risk of foreclosure by skipping a mortgage payment due to so. Ironically, even when Chris inevitably does pass on and go forth to meet Godbear, he will still be remembered, not only for his life and the many humorous misadventures in it, but for his comics. Thus, it can be said that Rosachu will never truly die. Simone La Rosechu. During the Asperchu saga, a recurring theme was Evan's legal claims in regard to Simone La Rosechu. As a derivative of the Sonichu character, Simone Chu, while early demands were for Chris to edit his old strips to remove Simone La entirely from continuity, later, Evan consented to letting Chris keep Simone La's early appearances on the grounds that he killed her at a later date. Chris, not surprisingly, totally lost it, showing a much stronger emotional attachment to an empty, one-dimensional fictional character than he has managed for any living creature other than his dog. Finally, after being faced with the threat of legal action, Chris finally killed Simone La in issue number 10, though not before she laid an egg out of wedlock with her baby daddy Wild. though of course the act of laying an egg was never shown or even mentioned, which hatched into Sandy Rose Chew. Simona's death apparently continued to haunt Chris long afterwards. This led to him reviving Simona around May 2014, more than 4 years after her demise. It would be noted that, as revealed in the Alec Benson Leary phone calls, Chris considered cartoon characters to be real, living creatures that exist in some other world reminiscent of Toontown from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Simona's death was as real to him as that of any family members or sweethearts, perhaps even more so. Troll manipulation. A favorite tactic of trolls is to manipulate Chris into reacting to scenarios involving death. A concept in contrast to Chris's childish mentally, and thus guaranteed he would either react in odd ways or in ways that could be used as ammo against him for future trolling. The scenarios, though fictional, were presented to Chris under the pretense that they were true, while Chris genuinely went along with the claims under pressure from troll manipulation. He did maintain some skepticism, such as when he expressed disbelief to Casey months later on the Ryan Cash suicide scenario. The first death scenario trolls experimented with was in October 2008. It was that of a fan whose father had passed away from alcoholism. When asking Chris for advice on coping, Chris briefly replied to the fan, "Will recover from the father's accident," and then advised to the fan not to become an alcoholic. A few months later, another death scenario was invented by the trolls, involving the Ryan Cash character, designed to provoke Chris over his lack of work ethic on the Sonichu comics. The fabrication was that Ryan had been a Sonichu fan and committed suicide when Chris stopped updating it. Trolls badgered Chris over the multiple chats to keep acknowledging the death, not satisfied with his brief replies on the death being sad. Trolls then elevated matters by having the Clyde Cash character threaten Chris with revenge over the death of his brother. A frustrated Chris recorded a video in which he tried to reason with Clyde, put his foot in his mouth by suggesting that if Clyde got a girlfriend, it would help him get over death. Sweethearts. Sometimes I remember her, but I have moved on. Chris on the late Panda Halo. Trolls also carried out the death scenario fabrications using a few of their sweetheart characters. Chris had blunt responses to the supposed deaths and seemingly adjusted quickly when another sweetheart character professed to be in love with him. When Panda Halo's character arc ended, Chris believed that their silence meant she might have been a victim of the Australian Black Saturday bushfires, despite her location being hundreds of kilometers away. Shortly after her apparent death, the Julie Sweetheart character was introduced to Chris. In a mumble chat where trolls directed the conversation to Panda Halo's fate, Chris said, "It's okay though. At least I have a good woman who's willing to be by my side at this point." 9 months later, Sonichu number 9 featured a special memorial to Panda Halo and a sequence in which she dies off-screen in a building's fire after saving her Pokemon, Chloe Rosachu and Blaze Bob Sonichu, so they wouldn't burn with her. Chris also dedicated all of Sonichu number 10 to Panda Halo's memory. This would be almost touching if the alleged dedication didn't wholly consist of how awesome Chris was for using Panda's cover artwork. The Sarah May character claimed to attempt suicide after Chris accidentally called her Julie multiple times in a call. After Chris attempted to talk her down, Sarah May went offline, still claiming she would kill herself. Julie, also in the chat, was playing along. It did not react to Sarah's suicide attempt in any human-like fashion yet. It did not occur to Chris that Julie's behavior was unnatural. Chris told Julie, "Well, at least I still have you." Chris then made a recorded CWC shout-out to Sarah May, in which the only reason he offered as to why she wouldn't commit suicide was that he would be sad without her. When the Ivy character arc was forced to end due to Rocky Shoemaker's intervention, trolls came up with the scenario that she committed suicide by hanging, being upset she couldn't be in contact with Chris. Chris uploaded CWC Boyfriend as a memorial, a poorly sung remake of Avril Lavigne's happy bouncy pop punk song, with lyrics changed to be about how much Chris would like women to date him. Chris included pictures of several past sweethearts in the video, making it less of a tribute to Ivy and more of a monument to Chris's failures. Ivy's demise was incorporated into Sonichu number 9 in the form as a gruesome accidental death, which involved having gotten her neck broken with the elevator wires after falling through the elevator floor. "Mary Jo is gone. I feel for you, but you should move on and try to find another woman who will treat you about as good, or possibly better than her. Suck it up and move on like a man would. I tell you as a man They'll do the same thing a few times in the past too. Chris's advice to a fan. In a mailbag answer to the troll scenario of a fan grieving over the loss of his girlfriend, Chris clearly states how he believes a death should be approached by a man, which includes finding another woman right after, and a specific lack of grieving, and tells the traumatized fan that he should simply move on unto a better woman since his girlfriend's death, not only being completely asinine, but also outlining that he believes women to be replaceable and possibly interchangeable. Terrorism and assassination. Chris has a very juvenile understanding of terrorism and its effect on the world. On the 9/11 terrorist attack, Chris wrote that it was the worst day in 2001, summarizing it was an airplane was stolen and crashed in New York. 8 years later, trolls exploited Chris's childish mentality in order to manipulate him to making the Twin Falling Towers video, suggesting that he should mock Clyde Cash by saying he's as weak as the Twin Towers. Chris failed to discern that he was being set up, producing a video in which he used his mouse cursor to crash into a picture of the buildings, while making explosion sound effects and taunting Clyde. After it backfired, Chris recorded apology for 9/11 joke on the November 2015 Paris terrorist attack. Chris expressed a modicum of grief in his own simple way, but equated the real-life atrocity which killed over 120 people with the actions of a cartoon villain, suggesting he still has a poor grasp of the difference between reality and fantasy. At some point, fall 2020, Chris tried asking Noel to kill someone. Dimension C197 as Chris's version of heaven. Following the Idea Guy saga, which affirmed to Chris his dimensional beliefs, Chris also began to think of an alternate dimension, C197 as heaven. He stated that he believes his deceased pets have reincarnated as characters and that his father is alive again. He also stated that Marvel writer Stan Lee's soul had merged with his C197 counterpart. So sure was Chris, and that he even tried to console a woman whose father passed away by telling him her father's soul had likely gone to C197. Well, that's the end of the quickie reading. This thing is messed up because Chris is messed up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And look, I have a second channel. Whoa, that's so cool. Look at it. Whoa, Sturfish 64. You should subscribe there now. I make videos over there with me and my friends playing games, and I think you guys would enjoy watching that. And on that note, see you guys.